Ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Zoning Board of Adjustment for September 21st, 2023. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty. Okay, before we proceed, let's introduce ourselves, please, to my far left.
Good evening, Richard Tripp.
Crystal Morin, Secretary.
I'm Lynn Perkins, I'm the chair.
Craig Corbett, Vice Chair.
Donald Burgess, member.
Jim Diesel.
Very good.
Bob Wentworth, Building Inspector.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Wentworth. And we have Clerk Jenny Rios in the back taking the minutes for the meeting and helping to manage our phones in the event of a technical problem. Please shut off all cell phones, iPhones, iPads, anything that could create a distraction to these proceedings this evening. In the event of an emergency, please exit to the rear of the room. Someone will assist you out of the building. Do not use the elevator. These proceedings are audio-video recorded. And I think that's about all announcements we have. So with that being said, we will start with the first case this evening, which is Scott Hammond, Great Woods LLC, Nicholas Brunette, and that is case number 23-126. Please come up to the dais. And good evening. If you could identify yourselves, please.
Good evening. My name is Scott Hammond.
And my name is Shayla Hammond.
So we ask that you read the 5 criteria as you presented them to the board off of your application, then we'll proceed to barrage you with a lot of questions.
So first off, the variance will not be contrary to public interest. If this property had required frontage, it would be hard to imagine that a single-family home would ever alter the essential character of the locality of the neighborhood, as the proposed site will be 200 feet onto the parcel and over 400 feet from the nearest neighbor, and the driveway 600 feet long. It is even less of a concern to anyone. It will share an approved driveway with the Jerry family that exists on State Highway 121 in Chester, which is covered in the deed. Public health and safety and welfare can hardly be of concern on the 45-acre home site that will have its own water, sewage systems, and well outside of any setback requirements. For the spirit of the ordinance is observed, the southbound of the parcel abuts hundreds of acres of undeveloped land. It would be unreasonable to think any injury to the public rights would be caused by approving this variance. Approval of the variance would create no congestion of dairy streets, no overcrowding of lands, and no undue concentration of population. For the substantial justice is done, as shown in the purpose of zoning, this application will cause no harm to the general public or to other individuals. The benefit to this applicant and the potential buyer fare outweighs the injustice that may be claimed by the public. The value of surrounding properties are not diminished. This home will not be visible to any other homes, and certainly will add to the appraised value of this property. The lot is now valued as a current use rate and will be liable for current use land tax as soon as construction begins. It is no longer qualified. It is literally out of the woods and away from the view. For unnecessary hardships, a recent timber harvest on this land has reduced its potential for timber production for generations. This existing driveway is the only reasonable way to provide access onto the site, the proposed use is a reasonable one. What distinguishes this property is, although it is landlocked and has 0 feet of frontage, it will have deeded access, driveway access. It is gently sloping southwest, 50 feet in elevation over 900 feet, and is perfectly suited for the home site. I will be glad to answer any questions to the public or board may have. I think the testimony given has addressed each of the 5 points of reference in section 165-3. Purpose thoroughly. Nothing about this application is in conflict of the RSA 67417 and the criteria set forth. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, so you're, and beside you again is, you are
Oh, Shayla Hammond, his wife.
Hammond, okay, very good. So why don't you go ahead and elaborate if you'd like off script, so to speak, and you can tell us a little more in detail any other thoughts on this you have.
Okay, so basically we're just looking to build a single-family home on this lot. We've been wanting acreage for years now, and this lot just kind of has that seclusion, and with it being, you know, basically 600 feet wide and half a mile long of a property, it gives it that feel that it's a lot bigger than it is, even though it's a very large parcel of land. And we wanted to just be able to create a environment for our kids to grow up in that harbors the use of the land, you know, for walking around, hiking, seeing things, and just being our own.
Well, based on the size of the lot, property, it reminds me of a movie in the early 70s called The Wilderness Family, so you're going to be kind of remote there, correct?
Yeah.
All right. And currently, your status is you're under a purchase and sale agreement, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else you wish to share with the board? No, you're not under pressure, so I just want to make sure you have an
No,
opportunity to
I
address.
think we're good.
Very good. Any questions from the board? Anybody down the line? Okay, so currently, just a backdrop to this, we approved a variance for this parcel to build on in 2020. As my recollection is right at the beginning of the pandemic. And that's about all the background I have on this. We're in regards to the history to it. One of the stipulations you have in the hurdles are the road access, or the driveway.
That's correct.
Yeah, why don't you give us an update or a status on that?
So right now, there is a right-of-way that's 16 feet wide going to the property. However, that only allows for access to the property, not for electrical at this point in time. So I would have to talk with the Jerrys about adding that to the deed to allow access to the property with electrical as well.
Okay, where does the utility stand on this?
That's my next phase of doing this. I wanted to make sure I got the variance before I move forward on it.
I see. Okay. The discussions, I didn't read too much on the notes on this part. Anybody recall the discussions relative to the right-of-way for the electrical?
I remember there was concern between the access easement and the utility easement. That potentially, I remember, there was discussion of utilities being run underground, but the utilities was a concern last time, but one that was a bit out of our purview. One that I do remember did get considerable attention that Mr. Burr brought up at the time, and I believe then you also seconded later in the meeting, was that the DOT driveway permit was issued in 1972, was one of the first permits issued, and that we believe that was one that would likely need to be renewed. I know that would likely be caught underneath the obtaining all proper permits and everything at the end, but just something of note that was also a concern at the time.
I saw in the notes of the old meeting, the minutes, that it was, that the state, and we'll come over to you shortly, Mr. Wentworth, but the state would allow, I think, 3 lots off of that one driveway. And did you see those reflected in the minutes as well, Mr. Corbett?
Yes, and I believe that 2 of the parcels are owned by the Jerrys or at the time, and then the other one is this parcel.
Okay,
Parcels are currently in question, but I'm sure we can clarify that as we move along.
all right. And on the right-of-way, do we have any reflection on how that access for the utility was going to be made?
Not at this point in time. And I did end up getting the state to approve the access, so there is a permit for that property as well now.
Okay, so that's been updated.
Yep.
And not necessarily our purview either, but
No.
we're trying to refresh and look at all the points that were considered the last time we heard this. Was there discussion, let me go over to Mr. Wentworth for a minute. Mr. Wentworth, you can consider this staff input or off of your staff report from the code officer that I know you're filling in for. But anything you want to help us out with on some clarity here, in particular with the applicant?
I'm not quite sure where your question's going.
So we have 16-foot right-of-way, which is over 150 feet. We're going to need, usually there's a 2-foot.
Usually it's an 18-foot.
Correct. We have any stipulations on that currently?
Fire department, I believe it's in the packet, that the fire department will have to approve this. They've already gone over it a bit with the applicant. At this point, I don't believe that there was any issues as far as the fire department is concerned, but
Okay.
you'll have to check with them.
All right. I think my thought is that where this is an existing, we'll call it a driveway, I would suspect that the hammerhead or ability for fire apparatus to be able to make a turn and not have to back all the way out to 121
That is still one of the
would apply.
stipulations.
And my thought also is that when this lot and the location of the domicile is located, that there probably is ample opportunity for the applicant to expand the driveway to meet that criteria as well. Okay, very good. All right, well, the utility aspect of this is out of our purview anyways, and whereas there's discussions already, and this application had been, or this request had been approved 3 years ago, I think that kind of clears up and lightens the load for discovery from the board. But does anybody else have any other questions before we go to public?
Just to your
Mr.
original
Corbett?
question about the 16 feet for the area as well, that came up during the last case as well. The Jerry's attorney had spoke to that the area is actually owned by the Jerry's, and that they had felt that they had the right to keep it at 16 feet. So that was why that one, it was kind of there. I don't think we deemed it necessarily a hardship, but it was something that it's basically out of their control.
Yeah, the driveway requirements beyond 100 feet are 14 plus 2 feet of shoulder clearance, correct?
Either
And
side, correct.
essentially,
Either
this
side,
is a
yeah.
foot shy on each side.
It was low as 12 before, yeah.
Yeah,
So.
and I'm presuming where this is already pre-existing for some time, that's why there's the latitude here.
That could be. yeah.
No guarantee in regards to this board, and I'm not speaking for code enforcement or the building official either, but I think that's some of the clarity that I've come to understand on this. So if nobody else on the board, Mr. Tripp?
I noticed in the previous minutes that there was some discussion about who was responsible for maintaining this road? Does the person who's granted the easement make use of this road?
I believe it would be a shared responsibility for the maintenance of the road between the Jerrys and myself.
Okay.
Say that again, please.
I think it would be a shared responsibility for the maintenance of the road between the Jerrys and myself.
Oh, so they use this road?
Yes, it's their access to their driveway as well.
This is an access way currently for an existing domicile owned by the Jerrys. So these folks here, due to the deed and the way it was scripted, I think back in the 60s, is that correct? Allows, I'm
72.
sorry, again?
I think it was 72.
72 allows access to this other parcel that the Hammonds are looking to develop. So it's a shared responsibility. However, as I was noting to Mr. Wentworth, once the driveway branches off of this to the Hammonds domicile,
That would be our
their
responsibility.
and the maintenance and upkeep will be singularly theirs.
Yes,
Anything else?
not presently.
Okay, good enough. That being said, I guess if there's nothing else, and
Well,
Mr.
there was one thing that we still have to get the approval from the fire department on this. I don't think they've ever had to go through that before. I don't know if it ever went through
Say
planning.
again?
At the end of what Mr. Mackey had put down here, it says it has to be approved by the fire department, the access to the property.
I think we just were discussing that with Mr. Wentworth and back and forth. So we're,
And they've never done that previously, have they?
no, but that's
Okay.
not our,
I'm just
that's
wondering.
not our purview. I'm just kind of,
But we have
trying,
to, don't we have to put that down at the bottom to tell them? I'm just questioning.
yeah, so when we get to designing the motion or, help me out. Structuring, thank you,
Yep,
Mr.
there you
Corbett, structuring the motion, we can cover that, but I think typically it's going to fall under town and state permits
Okay.
and inspections. And are you concur on that, Mr. Wentworth?
Yes,
Okay, very
absolutely.
good, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Burgess?
Nope, that's
Okay,
good enough.
all right, so if everybody's all set, let's make a call to public, and we'll flash some phone numbers up there, and Mr. Corbett, you're welcome to read them if you'd like.
Anybody who wishes to dial in, you're going to dial 646-558-8656. Your meeting ID is 323-909-140, and you'll press *9 to raise your hand. Anybody having technical issues, please dial 603-845-5585, and someone will help you out.
Very good, and that's to bring folks who are remote into the meeting and have an opportunity to speak remotely. That phone number will apply for both people who wish to speak in support of this application, and then in chronological order, who would oppose the application. That opportunity is now presented within this room as well, and anybody who wishes to speak in favor of this application, this would be your opportunity to come forward. Seeing no gestures or anybody rise, this would be your opportunity to come forward. Folks, I'm going to ask you to sit over in the front row if you would, and then you'll have an opportunity to rebut any testimony that's given. Mr. Hammond?
Yep.
Yep, sit over in the front row,
Okay.
and you'll have an opportunity to rebut any testimony.
Oh, okay.
And good evening. And your name?
Lori Simonson.
Okay,
We're an abutter to the property, Hidden Valley Campground.
okay.
And I just want to make sure,
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
it sounds like they're looking for privacy, and we just didn't, want a home like right on top of a campground.
Because you don't have any homes in the campground now?
Well, I mean, it's a campground, right? And, it
Yeah, so this board
just
doesn't,
sounds like they're looking for privacy on their own, and,
yep. And this board doesn't have purview over where the location of the home is, but
Right.
my guess is similar as yours, that they want it probably
yeah,
in the center, away from
right.
civilization.
So I have no problem with it.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else wish to speak in favor of the application? Anybody out there, Mr. Preventer?
Seeing none rise online, Mr.
All right,
Chair.
very good. So that being said, we've made a call for support of the application. Now we'll make a call. Anybody who wishes to dispute or oppose this application, this would be your opportunity to come forward.
That's him now. You gotta come up to. Whoops.
I'm the owner of that right-of-way.
Are you
that goes
Mr.
in
Jerry?
there. I own-
Are you Mr. Jerry?
I am,
Okay.
and I own both sides, you know, and more property there, and I own, all the way through to his property. I have no objection at this time if he follows the law of the fire chief, who I spoke to yesterday, the fire chief in Chester, New Hampshire. And he said the law requires additional land, which I own. So I would expect some kind of compensation, which Scott and I have talked about
Okay.
briefly. And like I say, I have no application, I mean, objection to him building the house there. And he seemed like a nice person, and we can get along well. But the fire chief was adamant that he needed that access where it's so long a driveway, and that's the law. So if he's willing to go along with the law of the fire department of Chester, then I would have no objection.
Is the opening of the driveway, is it in Chester? It is, okay.
It is.
Yeah.
That would be captured under the local town permits and inspections.
So, I'm sorry again?
I said I think that would likely be captured under the town permits and inspections.
Yeah, so Mr. Wentworth will reflect on you a bit, but, and the Chester Fire Department aside, so they want certain things at that access, and I don't recall how far in the Chester boundary goes in on this property.
Between 600 and 700 feet.
That's the Chester boundary?
No, that's the length of the drive.
No, I mean, where is the boundary of Chester on the driveway? Is it 10 feet in from the road, or is it 100, or, you know?
More than that.
I'm sorry again?
It's a lot more than that.
Yeah, quarter.
All right.
Because I think it runs
Is- you got-
parallel.
Yeah, so point that I wanted to get to is that the actual address of the parcel is in Derry, which is why this is here, but the established access to it is from Chester, understandably, correct? All right, very good. Well, so you have no objection to this, and,
If they
the-
concur with the Chester Fire Chief,
sure, and
the law.
And I think we note in the minutes from the, meeting in May of 2020, that there was work being done between the Derry Department and Chester, I think, or there was some
Yeah,
kind
there
of
was coordination
coordination
between
there,
all
right?
three agencies during the last one.
Got it. So in regards to the purchase of the land in order to gain that access for the applicant, that's a matter between yourself and the applicant. And I guess jurisdictionally, Chester can hold this project up, Mr. Wentworth? Is that your guess?
If they don't accept the drive, I guess so.
Okay. Well, so that's between you and Mr. Hammond, the applicant.
Oh, if Scott wouldn't mind piping in on this, I think he and I had talked previously that there could be a problem, and there is, and that we could work it out.
Sure. I think to Mr. Burgess's question earlier about the driveway aspect of this, and it's structured in our motions typically that the that this is subject to obtaining all state and town permits and inspections. So this board can grant the variance if it chooses, and it's subject to that. So if those conditions never happen, the variance again would drift as it had from 3 years ago.
Do you have any input on that?
Just the fact that Mr. Jerry and I'm.
Can you
hoping
speak
to
in the
work-
microphone,
Yep,
please?
just the fact that Mr. Jerry and I
Are negotiating
are
currently.
negotiating.
Yep, and that's not something the board has purview over. So once we make a decision on this, it'll be up to you gentlemen to hash it out afterwards. Okay?
You understand? Okay, I'll explain it to you.
You got it? All right, very good. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Corbett?
just, back to the point, at the last time we heard this, Mr. Mackey did put it through, that the applicant would need to check with the town of Chester for any approvals that need to be required. That was a code enforcement recommendation that came forward. I think that when we,
Structure?
structure the motion, I think as long as we do it to obtain all state and then turning towns, plural.
Okay.
I have a question.
Mr. Burgess?
Yeah, wouldn't our fire department have to talk to their fire department to figure out what the regulations are to put that?
No, because each town may have its own stipulations.
Okay.
Mr. Wentworth, chime on it?
On the, I'm sorry, I missed this question.
Mr. Burgess's question.
The question I had was, if we have two different fire departments, wouldn't our fire department have to talk to the Chester Fire
I'm sure
Department?
that they would be back and forth between each other.
Okay, that's what I was
I mean,
thinking,
the
but I
entrance
just
is
want
gonna
to
be
make sure.
Chester's Purview, but the site itself is obviously.
Well, yeah,
Derry.
because our fire department most likely would, a lot of times will go there.
Maybe.
I think it would likely come down to the fire department if they want to assume the burden or if they want to leave it on the applicant.
Yeah, okay.
Just a note,
Well,
I
the
I
fire-
can
fire
speak
department Discussion.
from my own experiences that probably I would say our town driveway requirements are more stringent than most communities around. I don't know where Chester's regulations are, but again,
Yeah.
as you and Mr. Wentworth have discussed, it's going to be, it's not necessarily reciprocal, and Chester has its own guidelines.
Yeah, okay.
All right?
I have a
Anybody?
question.
Mr. Tripp?
The, seeing that the Garys and remember what
Hammonds?
the Hammonds
Yep.
are already negotiating to increase the width of the driveway, I believe, or the easement. I'm wondering, do you have to give them a utility easement also? So, but would it be,
That's
So
outside
I'm
of our
gonna-
purview,
I'm going
though.
to hold you up. I want to direct the question to someone at the dais. So let me just hold your thought, Mr. Tripp. Is there anybody else here that wishes to speak in opposition to this? All right, so Mr. Hammond, why don't you come back up?
Seeing none online, Mr.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Venture. And then Mr. Tripp, I'll have you direct to Mr. Hammond directly.
right? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hammond, so I'm sure to get an occupancy permit, you're going to have, electric power, which is going to require a utility permit,
Correct.
utility access.
Yep.
Now, is the conversation that you're having with the Garys, does that include that, or is that just
It
simply?
includes access for utilities and,
And the width of the driveway?
yes.
Oh,
Yep.
So you're aware of this?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
And they're aware that you're
They're,
going to be
they're, yes,
requesting that?
they're aware that there's, like, in order to grant this access, we would have to make some changes. So they're aware of that. It's just a matter of discussion. So.
All right, thank you.
All right, anything else, Mr. Tripp?
Not right now.
Mr. Dietzel?
No, thank you.
Mr. Burgess, you all set?
I'm good.
How about you, Ms. Moran?
I'm good, thank you, Chair.
All right, and Mr. Corbett, anything from you?
Nothing else for me, Mr. Chair?
All right, very good. Nobody else out there, Mr. Preventure?
Seeing none rise, Mr.
All
Chair.
right, very good. Well, then let's consider that we've met statutes on public input on this matter. And if no one else has any follow-up to the Hammonds, they're welcome to rebut anything that's been said freely.
I actually had a question, and the question would, it's kind of a weird one, but what would the address of this property become? Because obviously it's on 121. So how do we come up with a new address?
I think that's a postal service thing,
Okay,
Fire
Okay.
department.
as far as I know.
911.
Am I wrong?
Fire department.
okay.
Fire department? Okay.
Yeah, E911.
Oh, that's true. Good point.
So the official answer to that is the fire department.
Okay.
We'll establish that, and that's the Derry Fire Department.
Correct.
Correct, okay. Anything else, Mr. Hammond?
Nope, that'll be it.
All right, very good. All right. All right, so if there's nothing else, we can take a motion to go into deliberation.
I'll make the motion to go into deliberative session.
Mr.
Second.
Burgess, Mr. Tripp has a second. All in favor of deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. We're all in deliberation. Mr. Corbett?
As far as structuring a motion, the one note that I had before was changing town to towns. Otherwise, I think the motion is pretty
Intermissible.
sound as is.
Oh, towns, just so it is a little bit more correct.
That works for me as well.
Only because you know I'll trip over the words if we don't.
Subject to obtaining all state and town, both towns. You'll interject that, Mrs. Moran?
Yes.
Okay.
And the waiver of municipal liability and responsibility.
Yeah, I mean,
You already have.
We've had multiple other cases over the 11 years I've been on the board where there's been other lots that we've had to approve, but in order to get to them, you have to go through Wyndham or some other community, abutting community to get to the driveway. So this isn't a new thing. But we have, on other occasions, some of those occasions, had multiple parcels, like on a cul-de-sac, might be 2 or 3 parcels all at once. Would you have knowledge of how we worked with the adjoining community, Mr. Wentworth?
We haven't done this in a while.
Okay,
I think the last one we did was with Auburn.
okay. All right. But it can be done and it would be done,
Can be
right?
done, yes.
Okay,
It's
very
been done
good.
before.
All right. Okay. Anything else? Mr. Tripp, any thoughts?
Not really.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, welcome. And Mr. Burgess, anything to
Good to
follow?
go.
And Mrs. Moran, you're all set as well?
I'm all set, thank you.
yeah, I think, saying it again, Mr. Chair, the only real concerns I think that popped up during this were the exact same ones as last time, and it's just, making sure that the permit is still valid, being that it was so old for the driveway, and just, being able to secure what they need to for the utility easements. As long as those items are all set, it's a pretty simple application.
Very good. Okay, that being said, we have our motion structured. Second condition will be waiver of municipal liability and responsibility, which would be recorded on the deed. Other than that, those are the 2 conditions we have. And are there any other conditions anyone would like to add? Seeing no gestures there, so I think we're all set. We can come out of deliberation. Have that motion,
Chair, I'll make that
please.
motion.
Thank you. Mr. Corbett has that
I'll
motion.
second it.
Mr. Burgess seconds it. All in favor of coming out of deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Mrs. Moran, you have a motion to read.
I do, thank you. I make a motion on case number 23-126, Scott Himon, owner, Great Woods LLC, Nicholas Burnett, to grant a variance to the terms of Article 6, Section 165-48.b.2 and 3, and Article 3, Section 165-9 of the Town of Derry zoning ordinance and New Hampshire RSA 674.41 to allow the construction of a single-family dwelling on the property, which does not have frontage on a town-approved street at 97 Dameron Road, parcel ID 13023, zoned LDR, as presented with the following conditions. We have 2. 1, subject to obtaining all state and both towns' permits and inspections. 2, waiver of municipal liability and responsibility must be recorded with the deed prior to obtaining a building permit. And that concludes the reading of the motion. I need a second, please.
Second?
Very good. That motion is on the floor, and therefore, let me read in the finding of facts and or introduce those points as well. The application is for in the low-density residential zone, and the property has no frontage on a town road. The parcel was granted a variance in 2020. Anybody wish to add to the finding of fact? Seeing no gestures there. So we'll move the finding of fact along with the motion Mrs. Moran read. All in favor of moving that motion for a vote, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Mr. Corbett?
Vote yes.
All right, Mrs. Moran,
Chair, I vote yes.
Mr. Burgess,
I'm going to vote yes.
Mr. Tripp.
I vote yes.
Yes, and the chair will make it unanimous. This was easier than the first time we heard this, so congratulations, folks. You've been approved on this. Anyone aggrieved by this has 30 days to ask this board for reconsideration. This variance is good for 2 years, and consecutively, where it's already been approved once and it's been 3 years, I would suspect you still can probably get an extension if you get beyond the 2 years on your start date. But hopefully it doesn't come to that for you, and we wish you well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening. We're going to take a brief recess, Mr. Preventure.
Okay.
Okay, give me like 3 minutes.
Love Jeff service.
very good. Okay. We'll proceed with the next case, which is Jared Dumas, owner Brian and Deborah Dumas.
Oh, that was quick.
You,
Yep, Chair, I'm gonna let an alternate sit on this case.
very good. Mr. Dietzel? All set?
You're up on the hit parade, son.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mrs. Moore.
You are welcome. All right, gentlemen,
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm getting to a point where I can't remember my own dog's name today, so forgive me, and, yeah, welcome back. I'm sorry? Jeff Moulton, that's right. Nice going. Welcome back, sorry.
Oh,
It's been a
Lord.
busy week.
Me and your dog. All right.
At least you know where you rank. It's like,
Hey, I've done it to you, Mr.
I love my
Perkins.
dog, by the way.
I was just gonna say, you're pretty high up there.
But anyway, you know the protocol, Mr. Moulton.
Sure do.
So welcome back, and please proceed with the reading of the application.
Yep, the proposal is in support of the applicant's tree business, allowing a home office that utilizes less than 10% of the home area. Allow parking of the tree business's commercial vehicles during off hours. And 3, allow occasional splitting of firewood, less than 5% of the year. No case with clients be visiting the site. Number 1, the variance will not be contrary to the public interest because the surrounding area already experiences heavy commercial traffic and noise due to being located at the intersection of 3 busy roads and being adjacent to the Derry Fire Department. There would be no client visits. Number 2, the spirit of the ordinance is observed because parking of commercial vehicles would be during off hours, and the lot would be heavily screened by trees and shrubs. Splitting of wood would constitute less than 5% of the year during slow periods of work. Number 3, substantial justice is done because the cost to the owner to store vehicles off-site would be cost prohibitive and jeopardize the viability of the business. There would be no gain to the public interest if prevented. Number 4, the values of surrounding properties are not diminished because the neighborhood already experiences heavy commercial traffic due to the 3 roads traversing the neighborhood and the adjacent fire station. The lot is heavily screened on all sides. Number 5, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. For purposes of this subparagraph, unnecessary hardship means that owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. No fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. Property has special characteristics as it is at the intersection of 3 busy roads and a fire station. General purpose of the provision is related to overcrowding, and this would have no effect. Double I. The proposed use is a reasonable one. The owner is not conducting client business on the site, and therefore no additional traffic. Only parking of commercial vehicles during off hours and splitting of wood less than 5% of the year.
So noting, there's a letter of permission from, I'm presuming it's your parents?
yes.
Yes, okay. From Brian and Deborah Dumas for Jared to represent the parcel. And just, Mr. Dumas, would you declare that Mr. Moulton is sitting here on your behalf?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Mr. Moulton, I see it in your supplement here, and when I was reviewing this morning, now it all makes sense, that you were citing a lot of case law in your submittal, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You care to touch on any of that at all in your expansion of your application submittal of the 5 criteria, or briefly touch on it? Essentially, this is your opportunity to put this in your own words.
Okay.
and expand
Yep.
from the,
So in this case, this area consists of very busy roads. The bypass 28, Scobie Pond Road, English Range Road, which experiences very heavy, noisy commercial traffic. The lot is also adjacent to the Derry Fire Department, in which residents experience heavy truck and random siren noise on a 24/7/365 basis. Parking of the commercial vehicles would only be at night and would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, nor threaten the public health or safety or welfare. The splitting of wood is done typically just in the winter or spring when if their workload is light. They use that to keep the crew busy so they can have a steady income. No clients would be visiting the site. All the work is done at client sites. And if there's any wood delivery, that would be done to the clients.
so I see that you're citing Harborside and Associates in your submittal as case law. And one of the things that stands out for me is, this is kind of unique too, because if you look at the connection, that Mr. Dumas is here, and I guess his parents own the parcel. So he's working under his parents' kind of guidance and earning a living. And I get your point about it's a very busy area. It's not your typical medium-density residential area. But, Mr. Dumas, are you mortgaging this from your parents, or are you renting it?
Currently renting.
Okay. So I think, Mr. Moulton, the point I'm getting at is the fact that if Mr. Dumas ends up having a windfall and he moves out of there, how do we make sure that down the line, somebody doesn't come in because there's been a variance granted for a log splitting business, and someone comes in and buys the house and decides to put up a garage and start an automobile repair center or a dumpster center or something like that? The variance itself sits with the property unless otherwise noted by this board at its time of decision. And noting your argument, which is that it's a busy area and unique as far as the medium-density residential, but I don't think this board wants to rubber stamp this as a commercial parcel in the medium-density residential area as much as we may want to consider having permission for Mr. Dumas to continue on in his endeavors. You follow what I'm saying?
I understand.
Yeah, and I can give you an example in an adjoining town where they were running an automotive repair center out of the home, and the home changed ownership, and who ended up buying the home was a dumpster company. And now you've got, somebody has come in, they bought the home, they applied for an application to expand on the home, and now they've got clanging dumpsters in the neighborhood, which has the neighbors rather uptight because of the fact that somebody has just recently taken up occupation of this home and changed the business concept that was approved by that planning board. So I think that's one of the things that I'm concerned about on this, particularly whereas Mr. Dumas actually does not own the property. And noting also in the staff report that we've come to some kind of arrangement through court as to how this application should be presented. Do you care to speak to that at this time?
You say through the courts?
Yeah, so at some point, Mr. Wentworth, can you elaborate on this at all? I realize you're not the code enforcement officer and probably didn't write the staff report, but any insight on this at all?
I have no idea about the court.
All right, so I guess in the end, you know, there's some aspect of how best to approach this so that Mr. Dumas can come before the board, and how this should be presented to the board, I guess, is what we're looking at. And at some point, some kind of agreement was worked out through mediation in the court to make sure that Mr. Dumas's right to present was not held up. Are you familiar with that at all?
Are you familiar with the court case?
With the hearing? I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Was the hearing that we had, I'm assuming, was speaking
Yeah,
about?
it's Superior Court.
Yes. So we had a hearing on the matter, and they granted, I believe it was 60 days to submit the variance, and 90 or it was 60 to 90 days, I believe, and I think 60 days if it was not approved to remove everything.
So the objective essentially was, because of our stipulations of special exceptions, a special exception because you're outside of the bounds of the domicile
Yeah,
doesn't apply, correct?
Right.
And so that's, where we're going with this, but goes back to what I'm expressing my concerns about, and I don't mean to filibuster on a soapbox about this. But I wanted to get to the point of what I'm looking at as a concern here, which is, are we going to grant a blanket variance here for someone to continue to operate and split wood? Or are we going to, Mr. Corbett, you'll like this
My
at all,
favorite.
right? That's right, sundown. And have those considerations so that this is not a blanket approval for a commercial operation, regardless of what that operation could be 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now in an MDR.
Would you be willing to make it just for you? If your parents sell it, then
Yes, so
it wouldn't transfer to the next owner?
I'm actually in the process of dealing with attorneys and turning the house into my own home.
Okay?
I've got I don't have any plans of expanding, getting any larger. It's just, it's me, and, yeah, I don't have any plans of, selling it to somebody that, if it were just for me, that would be perfectly fine.
So
Mr.
Would you
Corbett, go
have an
ahead.
objection if you did sell in the future that this right would not transfer with the lot?
No.
Yeah, so where Mr. Perkins is going, typically what we would do, jokingly refer to it as a sunset clause. And where it would go today is if, as we structure the motion, rather than going to the property, it would just go to your company.
Okay.
Then if down the road you end up acquiring the property, something changes with the business, your scope of work changes, whatever, you would then have to come back before the board to apply for another variance to change the the allowed company within the previously issued variance. So this would be a little bit more ironclad, so to speak, where normally it would just be the property could now just be used for anything.
Yeah, we don't want to see, if you sell it 20, 30 years from now, it becomes a nuclear power plant.
Could the conditions be, contingent on just myself using the property for,
Well, I think right now, we're not to the conditions part, but we are to the preventable maintenance part of this, which is, you're in an MDR, and I don't want to, I'm uncomfortable, and the board now knows where I feel, and can evaluate off of that, but I don't want to make this just a commercial property in the MDR. It has to be specific, and it has to be not in perpetuity.
Yeah, the thought that I would have, to kind of combat Mr. Perkins' concerns would be, if I were to structure it, it would be for your company as it is today, and then in the future, if you were to change career paths or just kind of change the direction of the company, that you would then just come back before the board and apply for an amendment to it.
okay,
But it wouldn't be, you got this today, you can never come back and request a change. We would just want it to have to come back before the
so
board.
once the property's purchased from myself, I would have to go for a variance again?
Or if you were to change what you were doing with it. So if you were to change from a tree cutting company to dumpster company, for example, you would have to come back before the board and just change the use from the tree cutting company to being, allowed for a dumpster company.
Okay.
And likewise, if you were to sell the property, it reverts back, the variance sunsets and goes away, and someone else would have to come back to us if they wish to have another business there or to have something of that nature.
Okay.
Okay?
That was part of, the questions I didn't have this piece of paper, and I was reading through this document, and the questions I was going to come about is say, you're in the wrong section, you should be in the next section down, plus, a little bit past that, so that we can, if somebody leaves the property, it doesn't go back, and I don't know why we couldn't go for a special exception. That's because of this document, I guess, from the court.
Yeah, it goes outside of that 25% of the domicile. And I think that's, your hearing probably ironed that out, Mr. Wentworth, as well. Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Mr. Dietzel, anything?
Mr. Chair, you and Mr. Corbett asked all the questions I had, and the applicant answered them. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Tripp. Anything from you?
No, thank you.
All right, Mrs. Moran?
I only have that I did look up the business name and it is in good standing, so I'm comfortable with using it.
Okay, very good. And Mr. Burgess, you all set as well?
Yeah, I can deal with the sunset clause.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm just kind of spitballing right now, but I wanted to share with Mr. Moran, and I don't like to sit here and soapbox, but I had my concerns and where we were going to go and try and cut to the chase. You're the last meeting, case of the night.
Bob's away, my sunset clauses will play.
So, Mr. Wentworth, anything from you wish to fill in for the board?
No, he's been operating there for several years now, and we felt it was time to get the variance for the business.
Very good.
Yeah. We also have some support letters from the neighbors,
Okay. Just, how many there?
4.
Four, okay. We'll leave them with Mr. Wentworth, and do we wish to read them into the record at all, or you want to leave it to the board's evaluation? Anybody that's a motion, if you wish to accept the letters and read them into the record. I presume you don't have copies for every board member?
I do not.
Okay, very good.
We accept them.
The good news is the letter's the same for all 4, so I could read one.
Sure, if
If
you'd
you
like,
read
go
one, sign
ahead.
them all, that works.
Do you run around and have people sign them in the neighborhood?
Bring the
That's-
fire
that was his
department some
job.
cookies.
So, to the Town of Derry Zoning Board, subject zoning variance case for Jared Dume. I'm in a butter to Jared Dume at 120 Bypass Road, and would like to document my support for his request for a variance. We believe the use of his property to park his work trucks during off hours would have no effect on the neighborhood property values, as we already experience a great deal of commercial traffic and noise from the 3 roads that run through our neighborhood, plus the Derry Fire Department. We also do not believe there would be any effect on our health and safety. So this was submitted by Jose Ruiz at Reyes at 120 Scobie Pond Road.
That's 139.
I'm sorry, 139.
That's Jose. This is his.
And then Eva Ruiz at 120 Scobie Pond Road. Kendall Marsh at 118 Bypass 28. And then Norman Goulet at 127 Bypass 28.
Okay. I didn't look at the abutter list. I presume
that's-
those are all direct? Okay,
All of
very
them except for Brian and Deborah.
Okay.
Nothing from them.
good. Good. Thank you very much, Mr. Moulton. Mrs. Moran? You want to say?
There's one other thing we could point out, if you look at the drawing, and the pictures would also demonstrate it too, but there is very heavy screening around the property. If you look at all around on the bypass 28, Scobie Pond Road, and then the back lots for 11024 and 58002. They all have heavy density trees and shrubs. And then conversely, the neighbors also have very heavy trees and shrubs on their side. So you've got almost a double screening
Okay,
for the lot.
all right, very good. Anything else from anybody?
I
Tripp?
just came to mind that there's no specification of the, excuse me, hours of operation when they're going to be working here.
Okay.
Do you have any idea what the hours of operation for your business is going to be?
We leave at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we're back anywhere in between 3 and 5.
So it's actually, no, since all the work is done off-site, the hours of operation, except for the log splitting, doesn't really pertain.
Yeah, the firewood's typically, in the winter, and it's very seldom. We probably, only do maybe 30 to 40 cords a year. It's not much, it's just a little bit, drag the guys through the winter when there's a lot of snow or rain. Wet season, when we can't really do a lot of tree work, that's what they're doing in the yard.
What times do they typically split the logs at?
It's, and during the winter, during that time frame, it's in between 7 and 3. No, nothing outside of that.
So would, if it worked for the board, would you be okay with a 7 to 5 restriction for?
7 to 5 is great, 7 to 3 is fine.
2 times to work with for the board?
7 to 5 works for me.
How many days?
Monday through Friday?
Monday through Friday, unless we have an emergency storm job, which is very, very seldom. It happens maybe 2 to 3 times a year that we have to work on weekends, on, one day a weekend, but it's very, very, very seldom.
Gonna go to the nature of the business, might go Monday through Saturday,
Yeah.
6
and then,
days.
Sunday, if, emergency or something, yeah.
So besides the splitting, you have delivery also?
I'm sorry?
Besides the splitting, you have delivery of firewood?
Yes.
Essentially, these are guidelines that give your neighbors protection as well, so as long as you continue to operate in a manner that's not offensive to them, once you do that and you go beyond that point, it gives them an area of grievance if you're there Sunday morning during church worship to
Right.
complain.
No, there's no firewood on the weekends, at all, ever. The guys don't do firewood on the weekends, it's just during the week.
Okay,
Makes sense.
did we concur a 7 to 5? Is that where we left
Yeah,
it?
he said 7 to 5, so he'd be fine with 7 to 3. I think 7 to 5 is.
Yeah,
a
go
safe
7 to
timeframe.
5.
I would say 7 to 5 on the truck, 7 to 3 on the firewood. They'll never split wood outside of 3 o'clock. It's, if we get back at 3 o'clock, they're going home. They've had their 8 hours and they want to go home, just like everybody else, so. There's nothing going on with firewood beyond that.
All right, well, I'm fine with the 7 to 5.
Yeah.
I can
Leave it
call in
open.
Give me the
concurrence,
extra
Mr.
just in
Dietzel?
case someday, coming back from
I'm sorry?
give me the extra couple of hours in case you're someday coming back,
Yep,
you know what I mean? From
Right.
something was done further away,
right,
gives you the leeway.
okay.
All right. Anything else from any members? Very
All
good.
the time, I think we need to open up to the public.
All right, very
We didn't
good.
do that yet.
So that being said, Mr. Corbett's just nudged us towards opening to the public, so at this time, we'll make a call out to anybody who wishes to support this application. This would be your opportunity to have your thoughts heard, and then we have the phone numbers. Mr. Corbett?
Yep, anybody at home who wishes to dial in, you're going to dial 646-558-8656. Your meeting ID is 323-909-140, and you'll press *9 to raise your hand. If you're having any problems, you can dial 603-845-5585, and someone will help you.
All right, very good. So that call was made, and seeing no one here in the room rise, we'll make a call to anyone who wishes to oppose this application. This would be your opportunity to call in or come forward. You see anybody out there at all, Mr. Preventure?
Seeing none, Mr. Chair.
All right, very good. And I think Mr. Moulton has covered the fact that the neighbors seem to be congenial towards this. So seeing no one rise here in the room, I think we've satisfied the statute on public input on this application. Therefore, if there aren't any other comments from the board or Mr. Moulton or Mr. Dumas, I think we can go into.
I'm gonna-
Just make sure
Can I
nobody
make one
opposed on the
question?
I'm sorry, again?
Just make sure nobody opposed on the line.
On the line? Oh, yeah, you all set, Mr.?
Seeing none, Mr. Chair.
Very good, thank you. So we're all set there. We can take a motion and go into deliberation.
So moved.
All right, Mr.
I'll second it.
Tripp has the motion. Mr. Burgess had the second?
Yep.
Yep, okay, very good. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And all in favor of deliberation, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. All right, very good. Anybody wish to add to the structure of the motion? We've got the two conditions, town permits, inspections, and hours of operation, as well as days of the week. Anything else?
That the variance will expire,
Oh, yes.
or is just for the tree service company? Now, do you want it to be just for a tree service, or do we want to specifically name it?
I would say variance to expire, noting that the only reason that this is a variance as opposed to a special exception is just because it goes outside of the bounds of the application for criteria for a special exception. So the variance, therefore, can be structured by the board to end or sunset, and it can be either when Mr. Dumas vacates the premises or when the business closes?
Ceases operation.
Ceases operation. Thank you, Mr. Tripp. How would the board like that
Did we say
presented?
the earlier of?
Say again.
Did you say the earlier of or either?
Either, can be
So
either.
if we did either, if he moves out,
Vacates the premises or sells.
Yeah,
okay, yeah, so then it would
I've got an idea.
would
but
automatically go, okay. Yeah, I think that covers them both.
I didn't hear which one it
I
was.
said,
Oh, that was me. I said I was okay with Donald.
okay, could we put in something like, as long as Jared Dumas rents or owns the property? Something to that effect? You know what I mean?
I think that was where Lynn was going with the, once he
Okay,
vacates.
so
Because I
that's,
think that's,
yeah.
Okay, yep, variance to dissolve an applicant, how do you want to say that, vacates?
Rents or owns?
vacates the property, or the company vacates. Or a company ceases operation.
Okay, or business ceases operation.
Hmm.
You have that, Mrs. Moran? I'm going to let you read the motion even though you stepped down for the case.
Doesn't get out of that.
Yeah, I was
You'd
writing as you were
rather have
talking.
somebody else write it.
No, I was writing as you guys were talking. Variance to dissolve when applicant vacates the premises or business ceases.
Operation.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. So we're all set then. Any other conditions to this motion?
I don't think so.
All right.
Mr.
very
Chair.
Do we need to add the hours of operation? Do we already mention that?
much. We did,
Yep.
yeah. We have hours of operation 7 to 5, Monday through Saturday. Okay. Noting that the board's in deliberation at this time, and so input outside of the board is not something that we do. Okay. All right, we're ready to come out of deliberation, I think.
Make a motion to come out of deliberation.
All right.
I'll second it.
All right, Mr. Corbett has the motion to come out of deliberation. Mr. Burgess seconded. All in favor of coming out of deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah,
Any opposed? Hearing none. And I know this is kind of a runaround. Mr. Moulton, I recognize you. You're all set for now?
Just a point of clarification, if he's planning on buying this from his parents in the next couple of months, does he have to come back in?
No, we tried to write it as long as he's on, basically occupying the property
Okay.
along with the business, that it'll be fine. We didn't want to put too many I's and too many T's that be held to everything as it stands today. So as long as you're there, the company is there as it is, this would be in place if the vote works.
If he dissolves the business or then he sells the parcel, either, then that's the end of the variance. Okay?
Very good.
All right, very good. So that being, that discussion aside, Mrs. Moran, you have a motion to read, please?
I do, thank you. I make a motion on case number 23-127, Jared Dumas, owner Brian and Deborah Dumas, to grant a variance to the terms of Article 6, Section 165, 46.a of the Town of Derry zoning ordinance to allow the operation of a tree service business from the residence 120 bypass 28, parcel ID 58001, zoned MDR, as presented with the following conditions. We have 3. The first condition is subject to obtaining all state and town permits and inspections. 2, the business is to operate 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday. 3, the variance is to dissolve when applicant vacates the premises or business ceases operation. And that concludes the reading of the motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Just a second,
There's
please.
something I just thought of. We never asked him if he wanted to put a sign up.
Say again?
You have a sign, don't you, Mr. Wentworth? There's a sign there now?
It's a little
It's a small,
stake type.
It's like the political sign, it's just a
Yeah.
thing you stick.
Probably 18 by 24. It's just a small lawn sign that
Would
most
he need a sign
contractors
permit?
use on their jobs.
That's all. I didn't think of it till just this moment.
Well, that's all right. We're going to consider that under the permits and inspections, Mr. Wentworth. We can handle that without the board going back into.
approved for the business, he's approved for that sign.
It's approved for a sign upwards of a specific size, so I think all town permits and inspections will allow.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, Mr. Corbett. Thank you, Mr. Burgess, for bringing that to the attention of the board. So where are we? Do we,
We're
motion?
now voting to,
Was the motion seconded?
not yet, I will second.
Very good. Mr. Corbett has a second. So the motion is on the floor. Let me read in for the finding of fact that this application is for a tree service business in a residential zone, and the parcel is in the medium-density residential zone. The board also includes all facts found in the meeting minutes for this application and incorporates all meeting minutes into its finding of facts and decisions. Any amendments to the finding of fact? Seeing no gestures there. That being said, all in favor of moving this motion for a vote, say aye.
Aye.
Hearing any opposed? Seeing no gestures there, let's take a motion. Mr. Dietzel,
Yes.
Mr. Burgess,
Yes.
Mr. Tripp,
Yes.
Mrs. Moran,
She's not
I
sitting.
stepped down.
I'm sorry, Mr. Corbett.
Vote yes.
Who did I miss?
Yourself.
Yourself.
Thank you very much. The chair will make this unanimous. His name is Perkins, and he has a dog. And so congratulations, gentlemen. Your application was approved by 5-0. Anybody aggrieved by this has 30 days to ask this board for reconsideration. After that, recourse to be Superior Court. All right, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Take care.
Do you have a card?
Not on me. In the truck.
I'll tell you what, Mr. Burgess, drive out to bypass 28, look at his sign, you'll get his phone number there.
I know where you live, so I'll be all set.
Anytime.
All right, very good.
Take care.
Thank you very much.
What, do you need some firewood?
No, I have an overhanging tree over the top of my house I want to get rid of.
Oh,
Maybe a couple more.
Yes,
Seconded that.
I seconded it.
I thought so, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I didn't also bring it forward, did I?
No.
Good.
Thank you.
She did.
All right, so we have correspondence, our Town and City and Municipal Association magazine. Anybody would like to read that?
Oh, good, no, thank
I'm
you.
going to take this one home this time.
See, I knew you read these. You always make it seem like you don't want the better home and garden stuff. You're always taking it out.
All right, and we have no correspondence or other business, so we have approval of minutes from September 7th, 2023. Can I have a motion on that, please?
September 27th, that hasn't happened yet today.
September 7th, 2023. Everybody all set with the minutes as they're presented?
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, very good. All in favor, make a motion for me to approve the minutes as presented.
Aye.
So, I second.
Oh,
No, somebody has to move it, or
I think Dietzel,
I
Jim did.
thought you did.
he moved it. You
I'll give
moved
Jim
the
credit for
question.
moving it.
All right, very good. So Mr. Corbett has a second. And that motion was moved like a bad kidney stone. After that, we can adjourn and take a motion for that. We have any cases coming up next meeting? 2 more, okay. good enough.
Goody.
Anybody want
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
to, very good, thank you, Mrs. Moran. Mr. Burgess has a second.
I second it, yeah.
All, who did? Mr. Dietzel?
Yes.
Okay, good enough. All in favor of exiting the room, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. We're adjourned. Have a good night.